welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Katharine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We are real close to this election, Vic. Getting so close. So we're going to spend a lot of time on election news. But before we do that, we'll do a brief chit-chat.
Yes.
I'm, by the way, totally over-caffeinated.
Yeah, I think we say chitty bang bang. That's okay. It's
2
one of
cups
those
of
days.
coffee and no food. All right. How's it going, Vic?
Well, Mary Katharine, it's going, you know what, sometimes I say I'm hanging in there. It is going great. You know what's going great? Because as our listeners might know, I had my annual physical and I had my blood work done. And I didn't even want to look at the blood test. So I just said, if there's anything that she wants to talk to me about, she'll talk to me about it.
Don't call me, I'll call you.
Yes. So I was really scared to look at it and all that stuff. I just get nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Did well. I would say the best thing she said to me, there was a couple things, but one she said is, and this is a quote, "Your liver looks great."
I mean, that sounds like a license for a lot of cocktail hours.
It does. And everything else, all my health across the board, she was generally pleased with, and it's very important for men. Prostate health is very important.
Good.
I'm sitting here on a donut right now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. It's not what pregnant moms do. The pregnant moms have to do that.
I don't think.
Not pregnant. Post.
Yes, post.
Yes. Yes. I get your screening. So everything looked great. And the question is, Mary Katharine, right? So I really hunkered down, to be good.
For like 4 days.
Right, because I had the lobster and the steak going into this thing.
Again, I'm not sure you can cram for this test.
Triglycerides, the cholesterol, everything is down.
Yeah.
So the question is, at this point, after getting these amazing results, these are probably the best results I've had in like a decade. More than that. Do I now go crazy? Do I celebrate and just go to the Palm and martinis and whatever? Or do I say, hey, let's keep this going?
As you know, I don't believe in any of that. So yes, go have martinis.
Okay. Yes. Oh, I'll tell you what. She asked me about my work regimen, and I was pleased to tell her about your husband's workout plan that he gave me, almost a year ago, which is the power press. And I explained it to her because she goes, "You do core?" I said, "Do I do core? Do I do core? Lifting, push-ups rather. Push-ups.
They call me the core king around here.
Plyocardia and core abs." And she says, "That's great. That's great." So thank your husband for the paragon of health that I am.
He will be so pleased to have been a part of it.
And I feel good, even though I don't run, but I do this other stuff 5 days a week. Mary Katharine, how are you?
I am good. I went up for a quick trip to New York City.
Yes.
Saw the folks at the Free Press.
The FP.
Michael Moynihan, Barry Weiss, hung out, did a little quick
Rogues Gallery.
Quick show for the Free Press. Enjoyed New York. Had some Korean food while I was there because we've been watching. I keep not talking about these shows that I should talk about. There's 2 Korean competition shows that Steve and I have become obsessed with. The first one is called Physical 100.
You told me that.
And it's 100 of Korea's fittest people, women and men, competing on equal ground. So the women are unfortunately eliminated pretty quickly. But
not against me.
But it's kind of a ruthless competition. Yes. They're thrown in there together. But, and I don't know, again, I'm going to be painting with a broad brush. I don't know if it's the Korean culture, but the competition show is perfectly designed. The sets are beautiful. The competitions are amazing. And the people are so kind and take so much responsibility for, like say a person gets kicked off of the show. In America, often it will be like, well, I was done wrong in these ways, and this bee over here, she did this to me.
Right.
And every single person is like, this was a rewarding experience, and I just need to learn more about my craft in order to advance further, right?
Wow.
And it's all dubbed and charming. Love it. The new one is Culinary Class Wars. And it's fine dining chefs, like Michelin star chefs in Korea versus like hidden gem chefs, like street chefs and smaller restaurants, holes in the wall. Fantastic. But I had my brain on Korean food, so I had to stop and try some Korean
Do you
food.
remember what you got? Did you get some
I just got one of those
bulgogi?
No, I just got one of those bowls where it's like
the bowl is
kimchi and everything and an
great
egg
stuff.
on top.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
It's good stuff.
I love that stuff. It sounds like the show, by the way, when you said that, they have men and women, but ultimately in the end, it's a brutal, fierce competition. Now it's mostly dudes. That sounds like in the true spirit of equality of opportunity, not outcome.
It is definitely.
Yeah.
It is. It's tricky for the
No
women
equity on that show.
Tricky for the women to succeed in the physical 100, but in the culinary class wars, they're doing great.
All bets are off.
So anyway, love those shows. Check either of them out, particularly the first season of Physical 100. Really, really good. So I did that, and then today, back to real life, had to get on the phone with the Social Security Administration about some work I have to do with them. So not like speech work. They didn't invite me to address the Social Security Administration. With some clerical work that I need to do with them. So I'm calling them. And of course, like I did all the stuff online because they discourage you from going online. And I did all the applications. They discourage you
from going online?
No, they discourage you from going to the office.
Yeah, right. Don't go to the office.
They want you to do everything online. So I do all the things they instruct me to do. And then it's like, click through to make an appointment with your local office to finish this process. Can't click through. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
The site doesn't work. So then you have to call. Okay, fine. I set aside this morning to call, and I get on hold forever. And then they give me the option to get called back. No. So I'm like, you know what? That's a good idea. I'll get called back. I get called back, answer the phone. I explain what I need. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't have access to give you an appointment at a local office. And I said, well, it doesn't work online, and I have to have an appointment. I can't do this online. So what do you think I should do? And she's like, she was very apologetic, but she's like, you just have to call again and maybe you'll get an agent who does have access. And I was like, well, is there any way to designate that this is the kind of agent I need who could help me have access to get an appointment? She's like, no. So it's just luck of the draw, and whoever calls me back, I hope. And she said, yes. And so I did it again. Yeah. And second time was the charm. So I did get an appointment. Okay. Apparently my online applications went through, and I hit the lottery by getting the second agent with access to give me a local appointment. God love the government.
Eugene McCarthy has a famous quote about bureaucracy being killed by its own inefficiency.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. So anyway.
And to be fair, despite
not a surprise,
horribly inefficient, they were both nice to me.
Okay.
So we got that going for us.
I assume they're all working remote too, because
who knows? Who knows? So we got that figured out, and that's a big accomplishment.
Knock that off your list, because anything that deals with bureaucracy like that,
huge accomplishment for the morning.
Hangs over you until you get it done.
I've already succeeded. In fact, I'm done. I'm leaving now. All right. Shall we?
We both got a lot done today. Yeah.
Just success all over the place.
Marking things off.
Well, I would say Kamala Harris met with less success last night.
Yes.
When she sat down with Bret Baier of the Fox News Channel for about a 25 minute
Yes,
interview?
because I had recorded it because I had to pick up my daughter, and I only caught the first 20-something minutes, and then realized I only missed like 5 minutes.
No, it wasn't long, but it wasn't short.
No commercial interruptions. That's good.
No commercial interruptions. They covered a lot of ground. Where am I from? What just happened there? They covered a lot of ground. He asked a lot of tough questions with follow-ups about the things that everyone, at least slightly right of center or a critical thinker, has been saying should be asked of her.
Yes.
Now, you only get one 20-minute shot at this. And so there was rapid fire at times and some interrupting to get her moving off of her talking points, because she was very quickly straight into the things that we have heard from her ad nauseum.
So the clock was ticking, is that what you're saying? Because I know that, this was recorded earlier, right?
Well, it was recorded. This is interesting, actually, because a little peek behind the scene that Bret gave is his show 6 p.m. They scheduled a 5 o'clock interview so that they could do 30 minutes of interview, turn it around, get it on air at 6 p.m.
Go live.
They said, we're going to be delayed. Also, we have to cut it short. Also, we're going to show up at 5:15. So they sit down at 5:15 to do a 25 to 30-minute interview. Think about how close that puts you to the showtime. You almost can't get that tape turned around in time. So there was a very compressed window.
Which is probably why he had to really go at it.
And
that
also,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And also every single question that he asked was one that one could have predicted he would ask. And that's not a knock on Bret Baier.
No.
He asked them smartly and he asked good follow-ups. It's just, these are all the things that we've been saying we need to know.
Yeah. Including questions that we've been wanting somebody to ask and that he finally asked regarding, and we can talk about this later, Joe Biden's wellness, shall we say. We're talking about wellness checks. And what did she know and when did she know it? And I was very glad that he finally got to that question. And I can see now, again, it makes sense that he has to press her on it because he knows she's not going to just directly answer a question. The question is, how many do you think came in? She's not going to give you a number when it comes to illegal migrants crossing the border.
I love that question, by the way.
That's the first one, too.
Because it's like, are you conversant in this at all? Do you have an off the top of your head basic knowledge of this?
Somebody in charge of this situation.
No, and she got, I thought she revved up too fast. She very quickly was visibly annoyed by the way this was going.
Yes.
And if you compare it to the way that J.D. Vance fields tough and hostile questioning, very, very different. Now, he's very skilled at it. Donald Trump less so. Donald Trump will get mad when he starts getting tough questions.
He'll chafe.
But I think it would have been a better look for her not to attempt to plow through all of her talking points. But the fact is, I don't think she can do it. I don't think she can go a different direction than this.
Right. This is the question because, she's done a number of softball interviews. She did 60 Minutes with Bill Whitaker, which was a tough one. And Bill Whitaker's demeanor was much softer, but that was recorded over time. They had more time to do this and then edit it. And as we all know about the famous editing of the at CBS, but the questions
were cushioned regardless, right? Because you're going to cut in with some film of you at an event. It's not just a sit down back and
some
forth.
Voiceover, and this one really was that he was pressed for time. What do you think the Harris campaign was hoping to accomplish by doing Bret Baier on Fox?
Well, their messaging mostly has been in the wake of this. Look, I don't think it went well for her. But I do think it's important to go to Fox and try this. I think it's the largest number of independent viewers watch Fox.
That's interesting.
And the ones who are truly independent and earnable are watching Bret Baier's show.
Right.
They know
Special Report.
That's the one they're tuning in for, right? And
they're not tuning into the Trey Gowdy on Sunday night.
I don't think as many, but her relentless focus on Trump certainly reminded people why they don't like him. But I don't think that the persuadables in the Fox audience are strangers to that message, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think she reassured them on immigration or on the president's health and her part in that, or her changes of heart over the last 5 years, which she just kept saying that was 5 years ago.
Right.
Or she kept saying Biden's not on the ballot. Or she kept saying, let's focus on Donald Trump. And those things don't answer people's concerns. So, by the way, just for data's sake, because a lot of folks in the media were saying, Brian Stelter in particular was like, Trump campaign operative, Bret Baier does his interview. Again, all of these things are just things that you could predict she would be asked about.
Yeah.
I went and looked up Bret Baier's 2023 interview with Donald Trump. Yeah. Just to see what it was like. And from the 3-minute mark to the 11-minute mark, so that's 8 minutes of a long interview, longer than he got with Kamala Harris, I counted 19 questions or interruptions on the documents indictment alone.
Yeah.
They were going back and forth on 19 points with video of Trump refuting Trump's position at least once. So if you put these things next to each other, this is not an outlandish thing. He's just a journalist who's asking tough questions.
I found it maddening in so many ways that the media reaction and partisan reaction to Kamala on Fox was basically, she did such a great job considering Donald Trump doesn't do any of these tough interviews, considering that he doesn't, handle these questions from the media at all. He only does softball interviews. And it's like, I don't know, wasn't he just, didn't he just spend like how long, an hour at the Economic Club in Chicago with
over
Bloomberg's,
an hour with,
John Micklethwaite?
Yes, that's correct.
And what about the National Association of Black Journalists? And was that a friendly?
Was it a friendly interview?
Was it a friendly one? Or when he was president, when he would, on his way in the tarmac or on the South Lawn going to Marine One, and he'd stop with the press, and then he'd be there for almost an hour,
right?
Fielding questions. And the pushback of that is, well, he just rambles on when he talks. Well, the point is, he is going to the press,
right?
And you're saying that he doesn't.
Yeah, accessibility is not really the issue,
right,
with him.
It's amazing.
I think, and it was weird because you saw two messages coming out of the campaign and the partisans on the left, which is, she went into the lion's den. She's so tough, which is like, that's a thing that you can check the box and be like, look, we did the really tough interview.
Yep,
look at us. People say we can't do it. We did.
Right.
She's tough. She went into the lion's den. He was very rude to her, and she still came out, looking great. Okay. The other message, David Plouffe last night, who's advising this campaign, an Obama
of course.
Alum, said that it was an ambush, to which I say, again, people have been wishing out loud on national TV and every podcast that is about politics, the things they could ask her if they were given access to her. Given that you guys, I know David Plouffe, watch TV and listen to podcasts, if it was an ambush that she heard all these predictable questions about her own record, that's on you. That's on you. You're supposed to be the person who gets her ready for that.
Going into the interview with Bret Baier on Fox News, with millions of people are going to be watching it because it's one of the highest rated shows, as we know, cable shows and news, and thinking, oh, I wonder if he's going to ask me about the border and if I should have an answer to that, or Joe Biden's mental health, or crime, or whatever. And then considering that an ambush because Bret Baier didn't ask her what's her favorite flavor of Doritos.
Right.
As was the case on other shows that she's done.
Seems wild to me. And the thing
also,
is, both of them, by the way, will go into tough situations occasionally. I think he more often than her. But the question is not just can you go into the tough situation, but do you perform well?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No.
You kind of have to do both. And Trump does it so often that even when he doesn't do well, it's diluted by the fact that he does it so often. Hers is not diluted.
I actually thought about the same thing.
Diluted,
Katharine.
maybe, not diluted.
Diluted, right. No, there's something to be said, regardless of how you do, but the frequency of doing a hard interview to get you used to it, the way J.D. Vance is used to dealing with Kristen Welker, or if he has to deal with, Dana Bash or whoever, that to practice, and it makes you better than just taking the softball, shows like The View or Colbert, because, that's spoon-fed to you. I mean, it's very much, having gone to Georgetown and the concern over how many cupcake teams do you play in the season, does that really make you better towards the to boost your record and then going in and getting slaughtered in the regular season?
Although I must say, the friendly interviews are perhaps more damaging to her.
When you lose the cupcake game, that's a problem too.
They're perhaps more damaging to her. And this didn't get a lot of play because I don't think there was any news broken in it at all. But the Shade Room, which is an African-American focused gossip Instagram site, did a sit down with Kamala Harris the other day, which again is a signal that she's suffering in their numbers with a demographic that should be so in the bank for them.
Traditionally.
At any rate, she sits down with this reporter, and when I say easy interview, it was beyond Sunny Hostin. Okay, it was like beyond any easy we've seen before. And look, it's a gossip site. This person isn't called to ask really tough questions. And I think he did do one slightly critical about like, why haven't you gained with black men in the way that you might otherwise, that Obama did, for instance. But he's asking basically just, can you fawn over Beyonce a little bit? Because he wants to make this connection between Beyonce and Kamala explicit, and you use her song to go on stage. And I'll find a clip of it for you guys. She can't even fawn over Beyonce correctly for a gossip site.
Yes, yes.
Freedom, freedom, I can't lose. I'm not going to mess up the words, and I don't want to get sued by Beyonce.
And there are a couple of versions that she has, right?
I know. Did you call up the queen? Like, how did that work?
She absolutely gave me permission to use the song. I love her, and
have you met her?
I have met her, but not since I've been running just now.
Okay.
But I have met her, and she's just very special.
That's an easy assignment.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to be like, isn't she the queen? And she's so great. I hung out with her mom, Tina. Her clothes are amazing. Her hair is amazing. I'm so honored to have her song. And she just doesn't know how to do it.
It's not soft. These aren't even softballs. These are T-balls. They're putting it on the thing.
Yes.
You just have to hit it. When you mentioned David Plouffe's remark, I'd like to, on top of that, mention Joe Scarborough, who said it was shockingly rude.
Oh, shocking.
And Rick Wilson, who said that she went to Fox to stack the bodies.
Yeah,
really?
I didn't see that. Shall we play each our favorite parts of this interview?
Sure.
We each picked one to highlight for you guys. And minus this which actually in the full clip has one of her worst moments, and then I think one of the moments where she hit her stride. They're both in one clip. So you'll hear the bad part first, and then she kind of gets her feet under her talking junk about Donald Trump.
Exhausted of Bret.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam Vice President.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
people
have become.
Of power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be.
That, I think, was my favorite question from Bret, where he says, I actually don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
Right.
And I guess some would, like, from their point of view, that's out of line.
The sarcasm. I mean, it came off as being sarcastic
it's
or
not
being
at all,
snide.
though, because she's asking him to be her teammate. And he's not her teammate in that moment.
Right. You know what we're
talking about. And he refuses to rescue her. He says, no, explain to me what you're talking about. And then actually she does have a good moment explaining this and getting a little emotional about Donald Trump. Again, I don't think that message is working with the audience she's looking for, but she did have her sort of wits about her.
Also, sort of that pregnant pause, the cadence and then the delivery reminded me very much of the pause before she says, we've been to the border. It's like she's trying to come up with something, and it's not good. I thought she did have some, it wasn't completely bad for her. And like many of these things go, you sort of get your footing as the interview goes along and you get the jitters out of the way. But it's all relative to...
Another reason, by the way, to give them more time, because if you have more time for an interview, they might give you a little, warm up.
To get into the groove.
Whoever the interviewer is, yes.
Right, exactly. And so I'll give her that. But again, it's relative to how she's performed on other shows that were saying that, my saying that she did well in the grand scheme of things is still not well. I mean, because I don't think this moves the needle.
Well, and I think on both sides, the left is correct that Donald Trump gets graded on a crazy curve, right? Because we grade the deviation from the mean of his normal craziness.
Yeah, and we're inured to the craziness. He didn't come into this being like,
Right.
oh, this is going to be a normal guy, and then suddenly he says this.
But she gets graded on an unimpressive curve.
Yeah.
She is graded by the deviation from the mean of her normal level of unimpressiveness.
Yeah.
Right?
No, there's a. It's the vacuous curve.
And so I don't actually think if you use concrete metrics that there's much of this that was good.
Yeah.
But there were parts of it that were survivable.
Survivable. No, and the pushing back and wanting to remind people about, the craziness of Trump and Trump's time. Okay, great. And I thought that, okay, here's a moment where she gets into that, but again, never actually answers any of these questions directly. She evades responsibility with the border. I mean, that was right out of the gate. And then from there it was, off to the races.
I believe your favorite clip was you
yes.
intro it, and I'll play it for us.
It was when Bret Baier asks her about what differentiates herself from Joe Biden and what would be different if she were to be president. Because as we know, we may often forget this, Joe Biden is still the president of the United States, and she is his vice president. She is in the administration at this very moment.
All right, let's try this one out.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about.
I mean, it's still pretty thin, but she sounds. That one line was delivered pretty well and is what people want to hear.
Right. So
except for Joe Biden, he doesn't want to hear that.
This is exactly it. I thought that was the bombshell because I keep on thinking, and I thought this for some time now, in order for her to gain some traction, she needs to actually say, you know what, I'm different from Joe Biden, but that would require her to, I don't know, maybe even give Joe a heads up and say, hey, no offense, and don't take this personally, but I'm going to need to distance myself from you in order for me to win.
So here's the question. Why haven't they done that? Why haven't they sat down with Joe and Jill and whatever committee is running the United States of America right now and said, hey, let's chat this through. Here are two issues that I'm going to distinguish myself from you on. No hard feelings, Joe. I know we already pushed Joe Ruiz.
Right.
But I need sort of to give you this heads up and to do this, and I need you to let me run. Well,
that's the thing. I'm betting that they don't have that conversation because he's still angry and bitter that he got pushed out, as he understandably should be about this. He's watching this happen, and he keeps on insisting they made all these decisions together. She's the last person in the room. Everything about every accomplishment, as it were, in his 3.5 now going on 4 years is her accomplishment. So when she says that she's not going to, this is not going to be a continuation of Joe Biden, and then she goes, adding insult to injury, says, I didn't spend my life in Washington like that old guy did, who was decrepit.
That is a thing people want to hear. Right. Now you spent your life in San Francisco.
It is.
So I'm not sure.
Right. But it's a direct indictment, of Biden, and it is not going to endear the Biden folks, Team Biden, to her. And that cohesion, I think, is really crucial as you get to the last, 20 days or less than 20 days left of this election. And you have to worry about some potential rear guard action, somebody leaking something because they feel like they have nothing to lose now. They're not going to stick around. We're not going to be a part of this next administration and what she's bringing to the table. So, might as well just.
And
blow it up.
That's what happened at the end of the McCain-Palin campaign,
right.
which I've referenced before, is people needed to find their landing place, right? So they get scared that they're going to lose, and then they need to set themselves up for their next job. In this case, because she has not a lot of loyalists to her, people are more liable to do that. The story in Politico, I hadn't noticed this part. I noted the other day that the Axios story had 10 people talking to Axios, which seemed like a lot to me.
Right.
The story in Politico about the ground game in Pennsylvania, which Democrats are worried about, which obviously is very important as Pennsylvania is the Keystone State, both in its nickname and for her her campaign.
It was what Ohio used to be.
Yeah. So the ground game they're saying is not good. The person who's running it, they're worried about. The local surrogates are not getting the right attention. The local groups are not getting what they need. Yada, yada, yada. Complaints being aired in public in Politico. But our friends at Ruthless noted 20 people talked to Politico.
Yeah.
20 people.
Including people on the record.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that is.
A lot of people.
And it's interesting because you had the one activist who is a grassroots organizer saying she still thinks they're going to win, but they would win in spite of Kamala Harris's operation, right?
Well, and look,
I don't even know about that, but
I would say that Harris's number one asset should be the ground game.
Right.
Because Trump's campaigns have never been as professionalized as even old GOP campaigns, which actually for a while were ahead of Democrat campaigns in absentee and early voting and those kind of things, mail-in in Colorado and Arizona. Republicans used to be great at that. Decided we would not be good at that for a while, and now they're trying to rebuild. This should be a strong suit for her. So the fact that they're sounding alarms is not great. On the other hand, I will note that Eric Erickson, who is a very popular radio host in Georgia and has obviously many connections there, is raising the alarm that he has not seen or heard from his listeners about very much action on the ground in Georgia from Republicans or Trump. Now, Kemp has an operation that's very good, so there may be things you're not seeing.
Yeah.
But there's also this weird tension between Kemp and Trump.
Of course.
Because Trump can't get over things. And
he needs Georgia.
Anyway, just an interesting counterpoint that if Georgia is not coming along in the way that it should be, it's as dangerous for him as Pennsylvania is for her.
Right. Who wants to lose it more is what it's coming to.
Truly, it does seem like they're dedicated to that.
Again, those are the two interesting articles regarding Pennsylvania to read. One is the Politico one. It talks about the problems with Kamala's grand game. And then the other one is the piece that we mentioned a few times now, the Philadelphia Inquirer piece, where they interviewed, again, for me, the quote that sticks in my mind is the guy from Center City, of all places, saying, everyone says that if Trump becomes president, he's going to be a disaster for the economy. And he's like, wait a minute, he was already president for 4 years and my taxes were lower. The other observation in that Philly Inquirer piece had to do with the guy explaining his vote for Trump because he says they always differ from management. Management used to be Republicans, and so they would always go against them and vote Democrat. Now their management is all Democrats, including union bosses, union heads, and they're like, well, screw you, I'm going to go for the other guy. That's an interesting observation from this guy who's doing that.
That was a very succinct way to put the rebranding of the two parties and the shift that has happened, which is, Democrats are white-collar management, very educated. That's the brand of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And the brand of the Republican Party has become, no, we're not your boss. A lot of us are just working class people. It's a pretty astounding switch over these not very many years.
It's the people. Bruce Springsteen is going to drive Bruce Springsteen crazy. Not that he listens, but I mean that if everyone were to explain this, the boss, since we're so...
He's a hammerhead. I don't know if
I'm Thomas River. He's Freehold. That's close enough. We're connected by Route 9. But the people that he sings about in his songs, those working class guys, they're all voting for Trump in that area. You look at the state there, that whole section is red. When you talked about Georgia and saying how it's awfully quiet, it just reminded me, back in 2020, our friend David Rutz, who's now at Fox, he was down, he was from Georgia. And I remember him saying, because he was down there, that there's something going on and it's not good for Trump Pence. Yeah. And that all the different counties, he was traveling all over the state. And so all these different places, Gwinnett, Fulton, you name it, a lot of buzz about Biden Harris. And I remember mentioning this to an extended family member. I'm not going to mention her name. And she just totally brushed it off and said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. Of course, George is going to vote for Trump because they always vote Republican." No.
Yeah.
And then you can't vote. You can't blame it on irregularities at that point because you should have had this thing in the bag.
It's hard to know what to make of anecdotal reports in the closing weeks of an election. However, it's also hard to know what to make of data because there's so much data coming in so fast. Particularly early voting data is going to be tricky because there was so much, an outlandish amount of early and mail-in voting in 2020 because everyone was conditioned to do that.
Yes,
and it
COVID.
was so lopsided. And COVID made it so weird that really observing a trend from 2020 to now is going to be very tricky. So I wouldn't take too much from that. Hard to say about anecdotes. I will say something I disregarded in 2016 because I come from a town, Durham, North Carolina, that is very blue and has a high Black population. And I went to public schools. I have a lot of friends in my Facebook group that are working in middle-class Black families. And I noticed in 2016, particularly with the Black men in my Facebook friend group, that there wasn't a ton of talk about Hillary. And when there was, it was skeptical. I have noticed this time around, and maybe that's just the changing nature of Facebook and how people use it, I have seen nothing about Kamala Harris. Just a total silence. Now, that doesn't mean that many, probably most of these folks are not voting for her, but the willingness to be openly excited about it is very different from other elections.
Think about 2008, 2012 with Barack Obama.
And even Biden in the middle. There was such annoyance with Trump that it was cool to talk about Biden. Anyway, just again, this is an anecdote that in 2016 I felt when I looked back, I thought, oh, that's maybe something I should have factored into figuring out whether she really was on her game. So just a follow-up on that in my unscientific sampling of my blue town in North Carolina, although that seems like kind of an important thing.
That's an interesting indicator. I was going to say, you mentioned that the poll is being kind of a mess. So like the Fox News poll, which is, people like to think Fox News is conservative, but the poll is traditionally skews to the left, as we know. They now have Trump leading by like 1 or 2 points, I think, in the national poll, and yet somehow
way behind.
Against Kamala Harris in the swing states. Kamala is up over Trump in the swing states, according to the Fox poll, like by 6 points.
6 points.
So outlier, I don't know. There's a Marquette poll that's out that is favorable also to Trump nationally. And again, we mentioned that the number of registered voters now, there are more registered Republicans, people identify as Republican, than Democrat. So for the first time in a very long time, those are just things to take into account, is all we're saying. Now, some of our friends, I think, in commentary have also explained it this way, which is, and this is probably something that goes back to Nate Silver, which is, if the polls are more like 2020, Trump wins. If the polls are more like 2022, depending on where they're leaning and how they're being weighed, it's going to be Harris either gets by in a very close election or Trump, does very well. We will see.
We shall see. That more.
It's a cop-out by us. I'm sorry, Beto. Time will tell.
I think people should be honest about the fact that this is a very closely divided nation, and we don't actually know what's happening.
We don't know. Anybody that says they know.
You can give people a lot of different ways to read tea leaves and discuss.
That's right. Thank you.
So one of the things I think is interesting is that Republican self-ID number being over Democrats for the first time. I wonder if that is an indication that there's not so much underpolling, that the Trump vote is not as shy as it used to be. That people have become more at home calling themselves Republicans, which would mean perhaps that what you're seeing in the polls is a true reflection of where he is, instead of counting on getting a little bit of a bump when people go to the polls. Can I play just a few more clips? Since
Please.
We're doing the big interview.
Yes.
Here is Harris on the big question that I wanted asked, that nonetheless I don't think anyone cares about. It's like COVID accountability. Does anyone care that Biden is not really president right now and that she knew about it for a long time? Anyway, I'm glad.
Is a good one.
Glad somebody finally asked her.
You called Donald Trump He's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Bret.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out, even people who worked for him in the Oval Office.
She's staying on message. It's very, very impressive in a weird and terrible way. Donald Trump.
What is that pause about?
Yeah, the pause was about because I think was there a part of her that was going to say, "Yes, I've known for 4 years now. Believe me, he's terrible. You have no idea."
Like she almost went there.
This is like what people used to say about Trump during the Trump years about like you think you know the crazy stuff, you don't know the half of it, you know, and this is coming from the inside, and it's like if she loses, right?
Right.
I really hope there's going to be some, if not more than one, amazing tell-all from somebody from the inside who wants to just leak it and just say, you know what, this whole thing was ridiculous, and let me tell you why. And I mean, like the postmortem, but also everything that went on. And maybe it'll be, you know,
also
maybe
too late to do anything about it. Nanny boo boo. Like this is great. One of the bigger scandals in presidential history. And it's just like, anyway, we'll write about it 3 years from now.
She has, by the way, a book coming out. Her big sort of picture. Trump does this too, and he charges an insane amount of money, and it does actually very well. Kamala has a book coming out on her life story, her road to the White House.
Oh.
The publication date is December 17. That's taking some chance, isn't it? Wouldn't it be better to get it out now before the election? I'm not saying she could. If she wins, great. Then it sells well. But
it may end up being a coffee table book in that it's like propping up your coffee table because
very funny.
You don't want to put it on top of the coffee table.
Remaindered, as we say.
Shall I play a little bit on immigration? Because
right.
This covers the bases of things that she could have been convincing to people on, but opted not to. Right. Here she goes.
You said in 2019 when you first ran for president, and there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
I just say as a technique, she's so insecure that she knows that this is her go-to, and then she notes that it's her go-to. You know what I'm going to say, right?
You know what I'm going to say, right?
Don't say that. Don't say that. Just say the thing.
What I'm going to say is obfuscation.
Don't telegraph that you're about to go to your thing. Just go to your thing. Yeah. Okay. How would it hurt them just to be like, yeah, stay in Mexico. Probably, we probably should have stuck with that. I feel like you could do that, and it would get you a ton of points.
Yeah, if you could admit. But it's like, whose mentor was Roy Cohn? Was it Trump or is it hers? Because she's not going to admit any fault. She's not going to say she's wrong. And
I think it'd do her good if she did.
I love how, yes, it would be refreshing, is right. And I wonder, is she going to reach that Bulworth point? People might not remember that movie anymore. Warren Beatty in Halle Berry, actually, where he did so badly. There's like, I don't care. I'm just going to do my thing now. It would be so refreshing if she just says, yeah, we got this wrong, but, these were the decisions we made at the time we thought were the best ones. But obviously we've learned from that and we're going to be better. And I'll tell you what, we're not crazy and we're not going to be X, Y, and Z. And instead, I love this thing that she says, which is, let's get to the point. That's what Bret was trying to do in the first place.
The point was he asked you about the number.
Let's get to the point, which is I'm just going to talk in circles over here. It doesn't matter what. And then they're very specific questions, and she just won't answer the question. That to me is infuriating. I also get nervous when she talks about the chips and sciences. I thought she was going to say chips and salsa.
Love that act. Love that act.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Had that act at the train station the other day. When I was on my way back.
Caliente.
Hey,
Okay.
Hey. All right. I think that about does it for that interview. We covered the basics.
That was something
when she was asked about her old positions, she never once explained why she changed them. She just said that was 5 years ago. And again, I don't think that is reassuring to the people who need to be reassured. Nonetheless, I am glad she did the interview because I think it's good to go in front of the biggest cable audience that has the biggest number of Democrats and independents or independents watching it.
Right, and they'll
and
have
a huge number of Democrats
and
as
her
well.
supporters will have her back.
Oh yes,
She did
including the
amazing.
entire rest of the press corps.
Right.
So, and I appreciate Bret for asking the things that we've all been saying.
No, and
should be asked.
And what I learned as you explained it to me on the show is how he was pressed for time, and I think that explains a lot. Because otherwise, if it was less of a factor, I would have taken a more softer approach where I would have asked the question and let her just ramble and ramble and ramble, and then when she gets done rambling, I'd be like, "So again, the question is, but there's no time for that because they're hitting the wall at 6 o'clock."
The thing I think is missing from all of this is just asking her to explain anything.
Oh yeah, that's another good one.
Like just a
Can you
definition.
explain?
The Fed, anything like some monetary policy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where would you draw the line between price gouging? What's the definition of price gouging and price controls?
So sort of like Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana when they go through at the Judiciary Committee with these nominees, judicial nominees,
right.
And he'll ask some judge who's going on to the appellate court, can you explain Article 2? The Constitution is like, no, I can't. Yeah. I mean, it's just horrible.
I do think one of those types of questions would not serve her well, but would serve voters well.
That would be an ambush, Mary Kay.
Real quick before we wrap, I just want to note 2 Now It Can Be Tolds, real big ones.
Please.
This is the New York Times reporting on the University of Michigan.
Oh, man.
The University of Michigan doubled down on DEI. What went wrong? A decade and $250 million later, students and faculty are more frustrated than ever. And then there's a deep dive, which credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
On how they spent this money, what kind of programs they have, what it meant for student life. And the conclusion is, it turns out DEI programs that you pay a bunch of people a lot of money to divide everyone with makes people divided and unhappy.
Yeah. But it gives them more to work with then. Mm-hmm. You see, you create the problem.
It's true.
And I believe that's the definition of a racket. But it's a creation of this culture of grievance.
Yes.
And they're not happy.
The thing that we pointed out in End of Discussion, Guy Benson's in my book from 2015, is that back when I entered college at the University of Georgia, what we would do together is we would learn to call the dogs. Go dogs, sing 'em.
Right.
Don't mark me down for doing it unenthusiastically. I'm just doing it.
No, she's pressed for time. Much like Bret there, she's pressed for time right now.
But that's what we would learn to do together as a class. By the time we wrote that book in 2015, it was regular practice for during orientation for freshmen at colleges to do something called a privilege walk, which is not a fake thing, which is where they say take 2 steps forward if you have 2 parents in your home. Take a step back if you, were ever in the foster care system. And so you end up at very different points depending on your life story. Instead of, connecting and learning things about people, what you're doing is literally pushing them apart and then making some people in opposition to other people. It is not surprising at all to us that this would make people unhappier. We've been saying it for a long time. But I'm so glad to see the New York Times and the elites catching up with these icky facts that they didn't like, that now they can admit.
The problem has always been because they want it both ways. On the one hand, they push for equity. Again, not the equality of opportunity, but of outcome. So we must have, regardless of merit, X number of people of a certain class or a certain color. And merit, by the way, is racist, right?
Yes.
They talk about merit is racist. At the same time, they don't ever want to be pointed out as, oh, you got this job strictly because of, your ethnicity or the color of your skin. Oh, that would be crazy. No, I did it because of my merit. And so, they want it both ways, but they can't. Right. But the reason why they push back on this, like Claudine Gay, for example, the former president of Harvard, is because on the one hand, they push for it, but they still have the common sense to know that this thing is absurd.
Yeah.
And so
one more quick one.
Yeah.
The Atlantic published a piece. They tweeted it with this on Twitter. The shoplifting surge is real.
Yeah.
People think it's okay to steal, and no one knows how to stop them. Now, everybody was clowning on this framing because a lot of people feel like they would know how to stop them.
Yeah, that's something called security.
It's actually an interesting piece because it goes into some of the stats and how stores deal with this and how firms help stores deal with this and how they feel like they are unable to deal with it now. But I would just point out to the author that the answer about what we should do is in the piece. He says, when Mike Mersheimer worked as a store detective in the 80s and 90s, the primary tools deployed against shoplifters were handcuffs, shame, and mockery. He'd see shoplifters swipe something, throw them on the ground, and cuff them. And then customers would often ridicule the thief as he took them out the door.
Yeah.
Then, new engagement rules at many retail stores discourage police and security guards from using force to stop offenders. They can no longer grab and cuff shoplifters. So I would suggest that there's a connection to be made here.
Yeah, there's some wink. I can't figure it out.
And
though.
again, thank you for recognizing the thing that right of center people and critical thinkers have been saying for a long time, and the elites have been telling us is not real.
It's maddening because you'll see videos like just down the street here where people are shoplifting right out of Lululemon, which is in a really expensive store. I didn't realize that. And
if I were ever tempted to shoplift, no. I'm not. I wouldn't do it.
And when you say that, up to you can take up as much as $900 worth of merchandise and not be prosecuted.
Guess what number people hit?
Yeah,
$950.
That's it.
That's what they hit.
So I mentioned this I think once before, which was Kate had gone to the Macy's, which is now closed near where we live, and when the last time she said she was there, all the clothes, you needed some security person to unlock it because they're all connected by the cord, the cable. In the olden days, you could just take it, try it, go to the dressing room.
Can't do that
now,
anymore.
And then most of the shelves are empty. And the security guard said to my wife, yeah, it's been a real problem here. And this is what you can't have, as Sonny Bunch would say, you can't have nice things.
We can't have nice things. Well, anyway, now you can be told by the elites the thing that you've known for like 2 or 3 years.
I remember when it was shocking when Winona Ryder shoplifted.
I do remember that too. It was a lot of money that she took.
I would have given her a pass. Okay. We got
Let's wrap it up.
We got to go. Really quickly, thanks to listener Hoodlum Doodlum for letting us know, by the way, from Wikipedia of all places, pimento cheese started off in the north, Mary Catherine. It did.
Enough. Okay.
That wraps up this episode of
disinformation on
Getting
this
Hammered.
episode of Getting Hammered.
Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram. You can see our shining faces. Also, you can find me on Bridget Fettice's Walk-Ins Welcome this week, talking about double dislikers like myself and Bridget. Or you can find me on the Free Press yesterday if you want to look back at their commentary show. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.